All right, so today I want to start by talking about this tweet from Pierre Poilievre, and he says the Liberals are not planning to make childcare affordable. They instead want parents to pay more for it on their tax bills. A $22 billion a year government-run childcare program means a permanent 3% hike in the GST, which with no guarantee everyone gets a space. And that's the problem. When it comes to any of these kind of things, the goal isn't to make childcare more affordable or to give people health care or to give people, whatever it is, whatever free stuff you want to talk. I mean, this isn't free, it's just indirectly you're paying for it. Um, it's simply a vote buy, right? It's simply a vote buy because the people that benefit most from stuff like this aren't the ones that are taxed most, right? And here's the thing, you can argue till the cows come home, oh, this should be a thing, this shouldn't be a thing, but the only reason that, or the main reason why people need childcare nowadays is because, I mean, number one, you have the prevalence of single parenthood, and number two, the fact that many families can't afford to get by on a single income, namely the dads. So that's the main reason why so many people need this kind of stuff, and that's the fault of the government, right? Like through most of time up until rather recently, the last generation or so, maybe a little bit more depending on where you're at, a little more, a little less depending where you're at. Um, you could afford, you could a lot of times easily afford to get by on that single income. But now that's very hard to do. And why is that? It's because of the government. It's not because of not enough this, not enough that. It's because of too many taxes and regulations, and immigration, I think, is another big thing. And it's not that we want zero immigration necessarily. People always make that argument, which again, that's how a lot of these people win arguments, is that they interpret what you're saying in the worst and craziest possible way you could possibly interpret it, and then think that that's the argument. Um, but that really isn't. The argument is, when it comes to this kind of stuff, is no, we just need reasonable immigration, and reasonable, at times like this is pretty much none, because unemployment is incredibly high and the cost of housing is also incredibly high, right? So there's no need for anything more than a very, very small amount of immigration. And by small, I mean literally more than 10 times less than what we have right now. Um, when the unemployment rate is above, I'd say, like 4%, maybe even lower, to be honest. Like the unemployment rate should be like incredibly low. And number two, they can't be coming to be net negatives, or to be net negatives, net drains on society. Like if unemployment is low, or I mean, here's the other caveat would be too, if an immigrant wants to come and start a business and the business seems feasible, then that's another way I think they should be able to come, because yeah, they're going to employ people, they're going to contribute to the system. The problem is the vast majority, at least compared to the average person, are not doing that. The vast majority are net drains on the system. And here's the argument. I mean, the left always will insist that's not true. Like the most stringent proponents for mass immigration, they'll always insist that's not true. But yet when you propose a system to where they'll be like, hey, we can't be bringing in immigrants if they're going to be a net drain on the system, they'll oppose that as well, right? So they're clearly wrong about one of the two, and I think it's rather obvious it's the first one, right? So yeah, I mean, not to mention too, like I said, this is just pure vote buy. They don't care about making childcare more affordable. Like, in what way, shape, or form has the Liberals made life more affordable for Canadians? Please, I'd really like to see it. The cost of housing is still very high, especially in the major cities. The carbon tax has made the cost of goods and services go up a lot. And that's very recently too. That's a lot more than the 2% in inflation that they like to pretend that it's going at. Again, so how give me one way that they've made everyday things more affordable. Maybe for the welfare, I don't want to work crowd, maybe those people life's more affordable, but for the vast majority of people, it's not better. It's not better. So yeah, I mean, and not to mention too, like this isn't just, oh, we're gonna tax the rich to get, no, like, which again, that doesn't work ever either. There's no way taxing the rich is gonna pay for any of these programs. But again, it'd be one thing if they were proposing that. No, they're literally proposing taxing everyone, right? Like GST is a tax on everything. So again, it's just pure insanity. This is from Kirk Lubinoff, and he says Alberta deaths in 2020 so far. Now, again, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't fact checked these numbers, but I do know in BC that the ratio here is even a lot more. So I would assume that these are relatively accurate. Um, the virus 260, opioids 449. So again, almost, I mean, probably what, almost half, almost double, sorry, I mean, not that far off, being double the amount of people dying of opioids than the whole virus thing. So again, why isn't this talked about more, and why is the virus thing talked about so much more? Well, here's the thing: the virus is being hyped up for many reasons. I mean, number one, the government can use it to grab more power. They can use it as an excuse to impose restrictions that people otherwise wouldn't accept. They can use it to their benefit for so many reasons. It's not even funny. Um, and not to mention too, what happens when it comes to opioids? Well, that's a very tough issue to deal with. Like that's a very tough issue to deal with because to fix the whole drug overdose and drug problem in general, you have to do some things that are very uncomfortable for a lot of people, I believe. I think that number one, the war on drugs needs to be either outright ended or at the very least scaled back drastically. But on the flip side, you have to hold people accountable that do this kind of stuff, right? Like, yeah, you can do all the drugs you want, but you ain't getting your free healthcare. You ain't getting this. You ain't getting that. If you want to commit to coming off drugs, then yeah, maybe we should provide some resources for these people. But that's the flip side too, because the goal of this is yeah, let people do it if they want to do it, but if they're going to do it, you need to use them as an example of why you don't want to do it. And I think the other big thing too, coming from the whole drug thing, is the left wing solution to it is to basically just be incredibly soft on it, in that they want the whole safe injection sites going. And again, that's kind of an oxymoron because that would be like, safe, jumping off a bridge sites, or, safe Russian roulette, like it doesn't make any sense because you're injecting something that could easily kill you into your body, right? So the whole safe injection sites, it's kind of an oxymoron, and I don't even think if I know many areas that they've only increased overdose deaths. So I really don't know if that's the solution. I think the solution is we need to end the war on drugs, and not necessarily entirely just to help the people that are on the drugs. It's to remove the profit motive from the people selling the drugs and the people benefiting from, the profits of that. I think that's the main thing. Um, and number two, like I say, we have to allow people who do this kind of stuff to be held accountable too. That's another thing that really, because a lot of people, they want to legalize the drugs, or at the very least, claw back the drug war, but they don't want to hold people accountable that make the bad decisions, right? You really can't have it both ways. Either you have to have a war on drugs, or you can't, and like it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, um, yeah, so I brought up Sweden a lot before, and I mean, I like to keep bringing it up because it's kind of just proving me right. And number two, there's still a lot of people out there that are, head in the sand, still think that the whole lockdown situation works, I guess. And yeah, like Sweden's cases and deaths are consistently going down, especially when you compare it to like Canada, the States, and a lot of these other countries in Europe. And if their solution was so bad, I mean, this is the thing too, the fact that the mainstream media has been completely ignoring it, at least in large part, um, kind of just proves that it works, right? Like it kind of just proves that it works. So again, that's something I like to keep bringing up too, because there's so many idiots out there that still think that the lockdowns work, that still think that we should be forced to wear masks and all this kind of stuff. And Sweden didn't do any of that, and they're doing just fine. Same goes for South Dakota. Same goes for a lot of other areas. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is from David Lejungren. Um, he says Globe and Mail runs 2 pages of upbeat stories on China. The content is produced by the China Daily. again, so we are literally running, Chinese propaganda in our newspapers now, and I mean it's a Global Mail conservative. I mean, I don't know. This is the one argument you always hear from the left when you try and say the media is biased, and they'll be like, oh, the Globe and Mail and all these kind of outlets are conservative. Which, number one, I don't know anybody who's on the right that says they get their news from these websites. Like, not one person. They're almost entirely, independent, you know, True North, Rebel, like those kind of outlets are almost exclusively where, I mean, people get their news. I mean, more people get their news from Joe Rogan these days than from these kind of outlets. So, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, these outlets aren't actually conservative. They're like about as watered down as you can possibly get from a conservative outlet. So, yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to bring up. But again, um, why are we doing this? Like, I mean, this is where we're at too. Again, people always scoff, when you bring up the fact that, we're headed down a socialist and or a communist direction in the West. Yeah, like they scoff, but yet you have stuff like this coming out. Like, again, like, which one is it? Like, which one is it? Like, it seems like we definitely are headed down that path. We have the liberals, many prominent liberals pushing for UBI, pushing for universal child care now. Like, they want to ramp up the whole, socialist healthcare state. They're not allowing private competition. Like, it certainly seems like we're headed down that road. Maybe I'm crazy, but it definitely doesn't seem like it. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, but also BitChute and Parler, but especially Twitter. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.